Hey, everybody, and welcome to this conversation with John Bradbury. How you doing today, John?
I'm good. Great. Good to be on the show.
Yeah. John is a comedian, right?
I am.
What else would you classify yourself as?
Recently I became an author, a first-time author.
Oh, cool.
Um, I
Hold,
wrote my
you got to
first
hold your book up for me? There you go. What's it say? Stoney Mountain Park?
Stoney Mountain Park.
Oh, cool. It's got a bear on there. Is that a bear that you met?
No, it's a talking bear. It's a fiction. So the plot, if you mind if I give a little summary.
Oh, no, go right ahead. Let's go. Let's hear about it.
So Stoney Mountain is a fictitious park in Maine. And the main character, Jack Rollins, is an alcoholic, and he passes out drunk, and his two friends find him, and they are park rangers.
Mm-hmm.
And they introduce him to Raymond, who is a talking black bear. Raymond, he gave himself the name from Raymond Reddington from The Blacklist, which is his favorite show.
Okay, so yeah, all right.
They don't.
How does he watch The Blacklist? I wonder. But yeah, go ahead.
Raymond, the way they met Raymond is he killed a trophy hunter in self-defense, and the trophy hunter has been running an illegal Ponzi scheme, and he had a bunch of cash on him, and he's wanted by the FBI. So the other two park rangers, Alonzo and Lewis, they took some of the cash and they set up a little cabin out in the woods so he'd have internet access and TV.
Okay.
So
this bear is pretty well set up.
Yeah, well, he's learning about humanity through TV and internet.
Oh, well, that's probably not the best place to start.
And that's the funny thing is he doesn't know like what's real. He's like, do you humans really do this shit? He likes mead, which is a honey wine.
Uh-huh.
He likes edible gummies, honey flavored, obviously. And also, the main character, Jack, deals with his alcohol. He starts microdosing LSD, which is something that is semi-autobiographical. I mean, I have been doing that, and it's made a huge difference in my life.
Yeah, no, I read that in your online thing there, and that's interesting. So I've heard of people microdosing for depression and for PTSD, but never for alcoholism.
Well,
yeah, I mean, personally, I haven't heard it myself. So that was interesting to see that. So why do you think that? How does that help? I guess is my question.
The crazy thing, see, originally in the 1950s, LSD was not illegal.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of psychiatrists used it. In fact, Cary Grant, the movie star, tripped once a week for 3 years with his psychiatrist to help him deal with his depression. And it's kind of the same way with alcohol. I mean, like, I still drink from time to time, but I used to drink a hell of a lot more. It's hard to explain why, because I don't know. It allows you to have more of a positive outlook, and it allows you to, when you're addicted, you're not really thinking logically. You're just thinking, I want more. And it allows your brain to say, look, I don't want to get drunk tonight because I have to go to work in the morning. Things that most normal people, that's obvious. But to people that, deal with it, it's not obvious. And it helped me focus and stay disciplined to write the book. And I think it's also helped me with my stand-up.
That's interesting. So we're talking about you're not like totally when you say micro, I mean what are we talking as far as amounts?
Okay, so a microdose is about 1/10 or less of one hit of LSD.
Okay.
And you take that through water. You dilute it with water and you take it through a syringe. You take it about 3 times a week for a period of a couple weeks, and then you take a few weeks off. It's not something you do every day by any
Mm-hmm.
stretch. It's kind of like lifting weights. You lift weights once, you don't get stronger all of a sudden. It
Right.
takes weeks and months. And so
So
it's a
so it's titrating into your system. So you're it builds up, and then if whenever you decided not to, then it would slowly go away. I'm guessing then.
yes. And when you do it that day, it doesn't feel like a hit at all.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like if I take a microdose, I feel like a small little bit of LSD. It's just it's it's a long gradual process.
Right.
But like John Hopkins University has started with mushroom therapy again
Mm-hmm.
because in the last for so long we had the war on drugs and
Right.
any kind of research was banned basically in the 60s.
Right.
And people realize that it does help. It helps people with PTSD, with depression, and with addiction.
That's interesting. That's the part I had never saw anything on. So whenever I read that on your thing, I was like, oh, that's very interesting because the other two, depression and PTSD, I've seen that, kind of out in the world or whatever you want to say. But for alcoholism or addiction, I haven't seen anything on it yet. I guess now I have. I've talked to you, so now I've got some awareness, but I hadn't seen or read anything about that before. So that's interesting. So would you say you said it helps you and it helps you focus with everything in general? It sounds like not just for alcoholism, but you said you wrote your book. It helped you focus for your book. It's helped you in your daily life, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it expands. It's kind of like if you went to a library and half the section was closed off, and then you took LSD and the other section was open.
Mm-hmm.
And now you would see all these new books and all these new ideas.
Right.
And it's not like it affects everyone the same way. It makes you just a more enlightened version of yourself. So whatever you do, like I can't paint for shit.
Uh-huh.
So I still can't paint.
Right. It's not opening up that section of the library for you.
No. And I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Limitless with Bradley Cooper.
I know what you're talking about. I don't know if I've actually watched it all, but yeah.
Well, he takes this drug that just makes him smarter, and he could trade stocks for 3 days, and he could play piano. It's not like that at all. If you didn't know how to do it before, it's not going to come to you. You won't learn a bunch of languages and things like that.
There's no magic to it in that regard.
No. I mean, I've always been a creative person, but I just haven't, when I was drinking all the time, I wasn't applying myself.
Yeah.
And
so you would be more focused on drinking than you would be on other activities.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one thing, I'd have the ideas, but writing a book takes a lot of discipline. And stand-up comedy takes a lot of discipline. You have to write the jokes, but not only that, you have to learn it. You have to deal with stage fright.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like people say stand-up. Some people do. I'm not saying, but they're like, well, people tell me I should do stand-up because I'm real funny at parties, and it's like, okay, it's two different things.
So if you're just funny at parties, it's not the. You're basically just getting lucky.
Well, it's not. It doesn't mean you can't do stand-up comedy. But you shouldn't just assume that because you could do one, you could do the other. Because for one thing, it's a lot different to be funny at a party than it is to be funny when people are paying to see you on stage on the microphone. They don't give a shit if you're nervous or how you're feeling, and they don't know you, so they're not just going to laugh because they're friends with you.
Right. You're not going to get the situation that you're talking about or making fun of is not necessarily universal beyond that group.
Yeah, and that's another thing is people say like, well, I bet you should tell people this story. And I'm like, if they don't know us, they don't know the story. It's not funny to them.
Right. That's right.
It's the same problem with like Facebook. It's like just because it happened to you doesn't make it important.
It's you had to be there, right?
Yeah.
So, which came first, being a comedian or being addicted to alcohol? I guess would be my question.
Oh, interesting question. Yeah. I was definitely okay. I was a very heavy drinker by 19.
Uh-huh.
When I say heavy, I mean drinking every day.
Right.
The first stand up I did, I was 23. And
Yeah.
so it wasn't like I couldn't do stand up, but I did like open mics. And I was funny sometimes. But the thing about it's one thing to have a few drinks to loosen your nerves, to relax. It's another to be drunk to where you're slurring words and your timing is off.
Right.
It's like, you could have a joint or two to do your show or whatever, but 10 bong hits might be too much.
Right.
You're not.
Then you're wandering around everywhere.
Yeah. And it's the same with stand up. So it wasn't, I was funny sometimes. I wasn't as funny other times, but I didn't focus or apply myself. I didn't take the time to be a student of comedy until the last few years. And it's not like like I said, it's not like I never drink anymore. Sometimes I do, but I don't drink. I don't get, it's maybe once every couple of weeks. And I just don't feel that need to do it.
Did you find that your drinking became situational, or was it just constant? Like you're always like, yeah, I'm just doing, this is what I do.
I mean, for a long time, it was constant.
Yeah.
It was something I did before work. If I didn't every few hours, my hand would shake. I mean, it was bad. It was, I mean, I had a lot of fun times. I mean, it's not like in after school specials where the guy has like one beer and he turns into a total asshole.
Right.
It's, there are a lot of good times with drugs and alcohol, but there's also a lot of bad times.
Right.
And I for a long time, I'd get sick if I didn't do it. And, I could go from job to job. I would wait tables and bartend sometimes. Great job. But in the last few years, since I've, really started to microdose, and it's a lot of different things. I also just started drinking. I've been drinking less for the last 10 years. And it's just kind of, you get older and it's like, well, this isn't the life. This isn't fun anymore like it used to be.
Right.
And right now, I was doing shows of like 5-10 minutes, like open mics and stuff. But where I live, there's a wine bar right across from me. And I've been doing 30-minute shows once a month. And it's not easy to do a 30 minutes. And I'm just getting started,
Yeah.
But one thing I've learned, because Maine is where I live, is not a big state. It's not like there's a bunch of clubs.
Right.
But oftentimes bars, and that's what I would tell anyone who's thinking about getting into stand-up comedy, is it doesn't have to be a stand-up club. A lot of times bars, in any place like that, you can say, look, would you mind if I performed maybe a Tuesday or Wednesday night when it's slow, and just getting practice, and do any kind of open mic, except for I kind of want to stay away from spoken word and poetry. Because music, it goes fine with, but with spoken word, it could just be like they could be on a totally different frame and they don't want to laugh.
Right.
It's like you can tell a poem, this is Emily Dickinson at my grave, and then I come in, I'm like, so anyway, this guy walks in. So
they're a little too overly sincere and serious, maybe.
Absolutely, yeah. Whereas with music, it's kind of the same. I've opened for bands, and then I've done a little set, and then I'll introduce the band. So that can work out pretty well. You definitely don't want to go on after a band.
Right. You want to be the warm up, right?
Yeah.
So, why did you decide that you wanted to do stand up comedy in the first place?
I mean, I've always been a class clown, which I mean, I've always kind of wanted to be in either acting, writing, wanted to be famous, to be honest. I mean, I've an ego. I mean, not to say it's always a deserved ego, but, I've always felt like, I would want to do it. Mm-hmm. And the first time I did stand up, I was on an open mic and I didn't get booed. It wasn't a great show, but I didn't fail. Right. And I saw some other people fail.
Oh, so the other people they actually booed off the stage, and they accepted your style.
Yeah. So that made me think, not I'm awesome at this, but I could do this.
I'm not as bad as those guys. So
yeah. And then sometimes I've seen people on TV and been like, and Jim Jeffries said the same thing. He's like, what really got me started is seeing other people that were making it and thinking, I'm actually funnier than them.
I think everybody goes through that phase where they want to do something and they look at around them and they're like, yeah, you know what? They're not so great.
Yeah.
So, how long have you been doing this then? How long have you been, you mentioned, did you say 19 when you started? Or that was when you started drinking?
Drinking, yeah. So
when did you start stand-up?
I started stand-up at 23. But when I say started, I mean like doing open mics once every 2 or 3 months. Mm-hmm. And sometimes even longer than that without it. So I was not a stand-up comedian.
Right.
And even now, I do stand-up comedy, and I do get paid somewhat for shows. But I'm not I still work a regular job.
Right. Does it have anything to do with any of this, or is the regular job just, you just got to do it to earn money? Like
the regular
job, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the regular job is, just to pay my bills.
Yeah, and it's not anything that you're really interested or passionate about?
No, it's not.
Okay. So then you're doing the stand-up stuff, and it sounds like, so I'm kind of mixing. This is just all stream of conscious, right, for me on all this. So you were drinking. You obviously had a point in your life where you're like, this is too much. And then, but how did you get from there to microdosing? How I guess, when did you make your decision that was too much? And then once you made that decision, what drew you to doing the microdosing at that point?
So we're talking about years. Like, for the last 10 years, I was reducing how much I was drinking. Instead of drinking every day, I was still getting drunk 2 or 3 times a week, but I was going days without it, which for me was an accomplishment. Mm-hmm. I didn't need it all the time. So I was definitely year after year reducing the amount of times I was getting drunk.
But that was a conscious decision, right? So
yes.
Was there an epiphany, or what made you go, you know what? Enough's enough.
I was in my 30s.
Age?
Yeah, I was in my 30s, and I'm still like working the same job. I'm still losing jobs. I'm still having a hard time, establishing residence. As it, was physically, it's starting to take a toll on my health. Mm-hmm. I had done 90 days in county jail. Mm-hmm. It's like, it was kind of a ghost of Christmas future. Like, this is what it ain't going to get any better.
You're looking out ahead and you're like, not liking it.
Yeah. And also, I was doing stand-up comedy, which for a long time gave me this false impression that, like, I'll just be a rich celebrity junkie and everything will be fine, like behind the music.
Right, yeah.
But what I didn't realize is that I wasn't I'm a much better comedian. Like I'll still, if I do a big show, I maybe have a 2 glasses of wine or something,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
I'll smoke a little bit just to relax. But when I'm writing my jokes, when I'm rehearsing, I'm sober. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's not something, because if you need alcohol to stand on stage, it'll catch up with you.
Right.
It won't be enough, and it will it'll affect your timing and your delivery. But it wasn't like a one epiphany, like I'm not doing this anymore, and it wasn't religious. I'm not religious at all.
Right.
So
So then what? So then you started reducing. What got you onto this idea of the microdosing for helping with that?
well, I started looking it up. A
Mm-hmm.
friend of mine, I had done acid a few times, like full trips, and I realized that even the days afterwards, I felt better. And so I started looking it up, because in like between 2012 and now, articles and blogs and research about it were starting to come out.
Right.
And people who, the alcoholism got me, because I wasn't really suffering through depression or PTSD, but I was definitely suffering through alcoholism.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went online, and I'm not going to go into the whole story about that, but
That's
basically,
okay. You want to share?
yeah, I learned how to do it. And that you mix it with water, and it's a pretty simple process.
Mm-hmm.
But I also realized I had to be patient. And
Mm-hmm.
so it took about maybe 6 weeks, and I started to really just notice that, first of all, I never thought about writing a book. And within about 5 weeks, I'd gotten my manuscript, my first
Mm-hmm.
draft. Obviously, there's a lot more to a book than that. I mean, like the whole type in the last page and your book is done is a movie trope. It's not reality.
Right.
There's a lot of a process to it.
Right.
I mean, it's just like you with your pot. You can't just say, hey, I like talking to people, so I'll be a podcaster. There's obviously more to it. There's more actual work.
We always hope there's more to it. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's actually, there's a lot of actual work that needs to be done for anything like this. And so that's where I think the microdosing, it allowed me to say, look, to just focus on what I needed to do and to do it. So it's not like I became smarter.
Mm-hmm.
I just became better at applying myself.
Oh, that's okay. That's a very interesting statement there. So it gave you essentially prior to that, you had a real tough time applying your focus to anything other than drinking, let's say.
Pretty much, yeah.
And afterwards, you're like, you know what? I can do something else. I can think about maybe a half a dozen things I could be doing instead of this, and actually do them.
Yeah,
that's interesting. No, I do know. I do have read that it really helps people with PTSD tremendously, because they get kind of trapped in a cycle of reliving their traumas, right? Mm-hmm. So I guess this kind of freed you from the cycle of drinking.
Yeah. And because it's hard for me to explain why it happened, but I can tell you it did, because I knew I was different. It wasn't like losing weight where I could look in the mirror and say, okay, I'm losing weight.
Right.
But I just knew I was different. I knew that I'd focus, and I just had abilities that I didn't have anymore. And as I keep doing, I was being able to come up with jokes better. And I've always been kind of, I've always wanted the attention. I like being on stage, even though it's nerve-wracking and it's hard. It's rewarding. There's nothing better. Well, there's better things, but when I do a show and at the end, people clap.
Right.
You know.
That's that's interesting. I like the way you said that there's better things. So you were alluding to drugs and alcohol. They're better
Well,
things,
drugs,
aren't
alcohol,
they?
orgasm, stuff like that. I mean,
Yeah. Okay.
but
Yeah. No, I always love it when people say that, and then I'm glad you qualified that because it's never whatever they're talking about. It's never true that it's the
yeah,
best thing.
yeah. I mean, when people like,
There's always something better that they don't want to talk about because it's polite conversation, right?
yeah, well, yeah. I mean, definitely. It's like just like when they talk about overcoming writer's block. Well, if you have a couple grams of coke, you could probably overcome the writer's block. But that's not a good suggestion to tell high school kids.
Right. Correct.
And there's also a lot of problems that go with that. Um,
Yeah.
Back to the PTSD. Like I say, I never dealt with that, but I have obviously I've done a lot of research. I've read a lot of research. Let me rephrase
Right.
that. I haven't done the research, but from what I read, it's kind of the same with PTSD. For one thing, to help people out, PTSD would be a lot tougher. Like I couldn't just do that on my own. With doctors, what they do is they give them the microdose, or sometimes they give them full doses,
Mm-hmm.
and they allow it's like talk therapy. It's almost like hypnosis, and they allow them to talk about the events, whatever it was, especially if it's combat related or
Right.
abuse related or things like that. And from what the people who've gone through it say, it allows them to sort of forgive themselves and allows their brain to identify. Like, for example, people who come back from Afghanistan or whatever, or Vietnam or any kind of military situation, if they hear loud noise, it could be triggering
Right. Mm-hmm.
because that's back, in war, loud noise could mean bullets
Or anything. Yeah. Anything
or
could be
anything.
going on. Yeah.
So it allows their brain to kind of detach from that. Whereas PTSD is your brain not knowing the difference yet.
Mm-hmm.
Like your brain can at times still think it's in combat. Whereas with the dosing and the mushroom therapy, and this is long term, this is not like a week or two, it allows their brain to sort of realize that, look, I'm not in combat anymore.
Mm-hmm.
These past events are not happening right now.
Right.
And it helps like with nightmares and things like that.
Right. Yeah. You develop a fear and you can't shake it.
Yeah.
And anything that enters into that realm, puts you on an edge, I would imagine.
And you can get the other, PTSD could certainly lead to depression and substance abuse.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Oh, definitely.
So
the interesting thing is you said you will still have a drink or two. Now, typically in, like AA and all that kind of stuff, they're like, you can't drink anymore. You got to be out of it. Right. Because there is a proven genetic link to alcoholism. Right. So if you have that gene, you have a proclivity to where when you drink, you can't stop. And so I'm not sure if you looked into that, but if you had, it's interesting because you feel that you have enough control over it now with what you're doing that it's okay, right? So you can in a sense dabble.
Well, yes, and let me be very clear. I don't do it I never really for example, if I decide I want to go out drinking for a night, I make sure that I don't have anything to do in the morning because I realize there's always a chance of me overdoing it.
Mm-hmm.
And if I do overdo it, I stop for the next day. But I still go long periods without drinking. And it would be better if I never did it. But, it'd also be better if I became vegan, but I'm not going to do that. I just don't feel like it.
Gotcha.
So yes, it's very true. And it's interesting, you talk about AA. Bill Wilson, the founder of AA, was one of the people in the 50s that tripped LSD and believed in its potential.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
If you look up Bill Wilson and LSD, there'll be interesting stuff on that if you Google it or whatever, because he believed it too. And once they made it illegal, he was very much. He's like, look, this could really make a difference. This can help people.
Yeah.
So I'm not definitely, like, I've been to A meetings, and you will never meet a selfless group of people like you could find in A. Not everybody. There's definitely people that use it to meet women, what's called 13th stepping. But
I can't imagine that I would be in a position where I'd be like, you know what? I'm going to go to this AA meeting to meet a woman. Does that
yes.
a desperate act to you? Or, I mean, that's what it sounds like to me.
Well, I mean, it's one thing people go there and they get into relationships because even they're not supposed to do that. That's totally different. I agree with that. But yes, there are people that go to, for one thing, people go to AA meetings sometimes for legal reasons.
Sure.
For probation, so it's not like everyone's in AA because they truly want to get help.
Right. Well, obviously now you got these guys looking for dates.
And it's not just guys, but yeah.
Or whoever.
And so it's the same with like rehabs. You have people in rehab because court enforced.
Right. Court ordered. Yeah.
So they're just kind of telling you what they want you, I mean, they learned the game. And I mean, I've learned, and I've been in court situations where I've gone to AA for that, knowing that I was going to drink that night.
Right.
I tried to be, I didn't, I was still polite because I felt bad about it, but I also didn't want to go to jail.
Right. Well, that's, but
I
don't want to do that.
But yeah, I noticed like there was one particular guy, this was, years ago, and he had an extra room that he would allow people to stay at. He would go to A and he had this extra room that he'd allow people to stay at. Coincidentally, it was always a woman that stayed at his room. Yeah. And she was always in her 20s, early 30s.
Okay.
And everyone knew he did this. Everyone's like, no, he's not a nice. But he's so nice. He's going to allow me to stay at a room. It's like, no, he's not nice.
He's setting you up.
He's setting you up. Yeah. He's playing the white.
Gosh,
yeah. I mean, it's unfortunate. And I don't want people thinking that that's AA or that, you shouldn't go to it for that.
Oh, no.
But there are people that definitely go to AA because they know you're going to meet. It's kind of like, in Wedding Crashers.
Right.
With funerals. And it's kind of the same with AA. You're meeting people that are kind of like really just want to be with somebody.
Right.
And
in a way, you're kind of preying on folks.
Oh, I'm not saying it's okay at all. It's not something I'm saying that's why they do it. It's opportunity.
Right. Yeah.
And it's not so much always that it's intentional, but if you're going to AA and you're only going because of court enforced, right, and you meet a woman that you're attracted to, then you're going to be less likely to be thinking about, is this really a good idea?
Right. Well,
my thing,
and then,
yeah.
Maybe you can help each other. Maybe you can help
that's
each
what
other.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely people that have gotten married at AA and both of them have remained sober.
Yeah.
But it's got to be one or the other. It can't be I'm here because I want to get my card signed and you're here because you're trying to get help.
Right.
Because one person's going to bring the other down. I mean, in other words, they're going to get you drinking again faster than you will get them sober.
Right. No, it's
my issue with AA is that I'm not religious. And it's not that you have to be religious to go into AA, but the 12 steps require a belief in a higher power.
Right.
And I just, it's in my book, the character's an atheist. And it's like, I just don't believe a God that allows the Catholic Church to get away with the things they do, millions of people to starve, but he's going to help you quit drinking.
Right. That's right. Yeah. I'm going to focus my energy over here because that's too far gone. Yeah.
Just like when athletes thank God for hitting a 3-pointer.
Right.
It's like, really? You think the same God that allows slavery, but he's going to help you hit this 3-pointer.
All right. Well, everybody's got their priorities.
Yeah, but I just made it's you sit there and you're like, well, I didn't drink. I go to meetings. I got a job. I'm taking care of myself. But God did this for me. And it's like, okay, stop going to meetings, start drinking, and see if God stops you from doing it.
Right. What are the odds on that?
Yeah.
Huh?
I mean, it's like, if you're doing everything, I mean, I agree that AA as a support system definitely works. I mean, of course, the idea of I'm going through something, you're going through the same thing, we can help each other. That makes perfect sense. And that's why I think it works. I just don't see why the Sky Wizard gets all the credit when it's like everyone. And if, I'm not saying, I mean, these are just my beliefs. I feel like if everyone's helping each other, yet they're all saying it wouldn't be possible without God. And it's like, I don't understand that. You guys have shown that you can do it.
Right. When do you start crediting yourself a little bit?
Yeah.
Interesting. So you say atheist, do you mean totally against anything spiritual at all, or?
That's well, I don't believe in religion. Okay. I'm open to the fact that there's something out there, but I don't believe, first of all, the fact that the book was written 3,000 years ago, or 2,000 years ago, or 1,500 years ago. I don't believe in any man-made religion because there's so many ulterior motives.
Yeah,
now,
I mean, they got the priests are just looking to pick up somebody.
Yeah, I mean,
it's just like the AA meeting. That's why they're in for it. They're like, if I stand up here and talk, maybe I'll get lucky or something.
You'll get money.
Yeah.
You'll get power. You'll get control. I mean, and that doesn't mean it's the same thing with Christianity. I mean, there's a lot of good people that are Christians or Muslims or Jewish, but they were good regardless of the religion.
Right.
But it's proven that religion doesn't make you good. If you're an asshole who goes to church, you're just an asshole that goes to church. And there's plenty of those.
Now, I'm going to throw you a curveball here, right? So maybe the religion keeps them in check. But, you know what I'm saying? So if it's kind of like, a situation where they're like, I'm going to do this because it helps me, it keeps me in check on all the bad things that I'm doing so that it gives me limits. Now, some might say it's kind of like microdosing.
Oh, well, here's why I completely disagree with that. And I understand you're just throwing me a curve. But first of all, going by the last 10,000 years of history, people have always had some sort of gods or religion. And people have continued to do horrible things.
Oh, yeah.
Mostly by being religious. If you go to prison, every cell you see Bibles. And the whole thing about religion, since the actual God doesn't show up, is everyone's able to rationalize their own shitty behavior or good behavior. In other words, if you're someone that likes to help people and you're a Christian, it's like, yeah, but I bet if there weren't Christianity, you would still be helping people. And then there's others who believe that they're forgiven every week. Oh, I know I was an asshole, but I'm going to mumble some Latin and, make a hand gesture. Look at like the Catholic Church, the entire Catholic with the priests and the sexual abuse. This was going on for centuries. And it wasn't just that priests did it. It was the whole church hid it and condoned it.
Right.
And I bet a lot of these people probably rationalized that they were forgiven. So, yeah. In other words, if you're only doing it because you think you're going to hell, well, I guess that's better than nothing. But I believe most people who do bad things, like they're mafia guys who go to church. And there's, there's hate groups. They're all religious. The closest I come to spirituality is I've gone to some Wiccan meetings. Witchcraft, and I like to read about that because I think witchcraft is a lot more about empowering yourself. Like, I don't really believe in spells. Like, I could cast a spell and I will
Mm-hmm.
be successful. I've tried, it hasn't worked. But eh,
So you're
I
talking more Wiccan as in the nature side of
yes,
things, right? Okay.
yeah, and I've been to some gatherings, and we've taken mushrooms and doing some things like that, and I like that a lot
Mm-hmm.
because and it is communal, but it's not dogma. It's not I'm telling you how to behave, and if you don't
Right.
do it, then whatever the Sky Wizard is going to get you.
Right.
And like I say, there's a lot of good people that are religious. I just believe they'd be good anyway. In other words, if you're a bad person, there's a lot of bad people that use religion
Mm-hmm.
to get away with it. There's a lot of people, and so I just don't believe it. It's not that, and that's another straw man that a lot of the Christians and Muslims use, is that atheists are mad at God,
Mm-hmm.
or that we just want to sin. And it's like, I don't believe in sin.
Well, I think that they say atheism is a free card to sin.
Yeah, but I still am not a bad person. I don't rape, I don't murder,
Yeah.
and and it's not because, in other words, I don't believe I have the right to do that to people just because
Mhm.
there's no God above me. It's like, have you ever seen True Detective, the first season?
Oh yeah, yeah. I just watched that not too long ago. Oddly enough,
The
yeah,
first season. The fourth one has been a disaster, but
yeah.
the first season, Matthew McConaughey says something like, he's like, if the only thing keeping a man decent is the promise of a divine reward in heaven, that man's a piece of shit. And the sooner we bring these people to light, the better. And that's,
Yeah.
I couldn't agree with that statement more.
How interesting. So there are some tangents, though, if you think about it, between religion and stand-up comedy, because you both get in front of people, right?
Yeah,
And you are entertaining them for a certain amount of time. Usually, it's not too long, just like a priest or a preacher would do.
absolutely.
And then is a reward in all of that,
Yeah.
generally, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it is kind of interesting that there is parallels between the two. But what do you think the differences are?
Well, for one thing, I'm a stand-up comedian. That's what I'm claiming to be. I'm not claiming that there's some divine presence behind me that's writing these jokes for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not judging other people what they do when they go home. Everything about me, I'm not dogmatic. I'm not telling you who to hate.
Mm-hmm.
There definitely is performance, but I'm not telling people. When you break a lot of religion, it's people who haven't died telling you what happens when you die.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you've flatlined, you really haven't died. So people are like, well, I saw a white light. And it's like, I'm not claiming I know what happens when you die.
Right.
I don't. So I'm not claiming. I've never gotten up. So you're right. You're very much right about being a priest is a performer, but it shouldn't be. Just like being a politician.
I think if it wasn't, they wouldn't have a career, to be honest.
Exactly. Just like being a politician shouldn't be about being a performer.
Oh, yeah.
But it is.
Yeah.
You're like, for example, Bill Burr was talking about public speaking, and he was talking about one of the best public speakers ever was Adolf Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
Just the way he controlled the crowd. He obviously used it for very horrible things.
Sure.
But Martin Luther King, who used it for great things, was also a great public speaker.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, charisma doesn't always go to the best of people.
Right.
Having charisma and public speaking and having that ability doesn't make you a good person, and it can be abused. And unfortunately, it is abused. And it's the same thing with politics. The best people for the job aren't necessarily the people that are the best public speakers.
Right. Yeah. Oddly enough, which brings you, it kind of comes full circle, because some people are really funny in a group, but they're not funny on stage.
Yeah. Well, I think I was funnier in a group before I was funny on stage. I mean, I even like I said, I didn't get booed my first time stand up, but I realized I had a long ways to go.
Hmm.
It's big funny on stage is totally different because they're expecting you to be funny.
Right. That's
If
the
you're
deal,
funny,
right? You're making the deal to get up there and be funny.
yeah, exactly. If you're funny at work, it's great to have you because you're making the day go by faster.
Hmm.
But if someone paid $10, it's a different expectation. Or even if it's just open mic, if people are watching you, they expect a higher level of performance.
Hmm.
And that's when, and it's there are people that are great joke writers and make careers as joke writers, but they just have a hard time performing
Yeah.
on stage. I mean, you could have a very good career as a comedy writer, and there are comedy writers that just don't really do well at performing on stage.
So, John, where do you? I was at. We're kind of getting to our time here. What do you think is the 5 year trajectory for John Bradbury here, starting today? 5 years from today.
5 year, okay, all right. Well, I recently just got Final Draft software. I'm trying to turn my book into a screenplay because I think The Talking Bear Uses Drugs could make a great movie.
Well, they had Cocaine Bear, so you can
Cocaine
ride
Bear,
on
yes.
the
And
heels of Cocaine Bear with something a little more gravitas.
that definitely good word. But in fact, I did have this book. I was doing this book before the movie came out. I know people will accuse me of cop book. Anyway, but that's my goal. I want to do more stand-up comedy as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to, basically those two. I mean, my goal is to
Do you
see
think that you'll continue with the microdosing, or do you think that will run its course and you'll basically kind of reduce that or eliminate that in your life?
Well, I do it in cycles, so I'll do it for a month or two, and then I won't do it for a few months.
Sure.
I mean, I can't say I'll do it for the rest of my life, but I have no intention of stopping right now.
Mm-hmm. And not in 5 years?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's
okay. Well, no, the 5 year question is one of those questions where it's like, what do you anticipate your thoughts are now for there? Because everything changes, obviously.
Of course, as long as it's helping me,
mm-hmm.
And it's like I say, I might take 6 months off, but I just don't think I'd ever just swear it off for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
I just probably would take longer breaks.
Okay.
And, I do sometimes trip, like actually take a full trip.
Mm-hmm.
And, that'll just always be something I think that'll be a part of my life. And I'll probably always drink sometimes, but drinking is something I never want to go back to doing every day.
Right.
So,
you felt the negative effects of drinking every day already, and you don't want to get back to that.
I've seen how the movie ends, and I don't want to relive it. It doesn't, and that's anybody. I would, to add one more thing,
sure.
I would like to write more about microdosing and how it can help people, and I would like to be a proponent of that, and in any way I can, just to talk to people about it who have questions about it, because it really can make a huge difference. You don't want to be living a shitty life addicted to a substance, and you don't want to be a prisoner of PTSD and depression if there is something that can help you.
Oh, yeah.
And
exactly.
I hope as we get away from the war on drugs and that huge, ridiculous logic that we used for so long,
right?
That we will.
My philosophy is there's a war on drugs that aren't making people massive amounts of profit.
Yeah.
Certain people.
Yeah.
Maybe the corporations, maybe.
Yeah. There's always been our ulterior motives for that.
That's why they legalized pot everywhere, is because then they can move that money from one place to another.
Well, yeah, and it also clears out our prisons somewhat. It's the same thing with gambling.
Yeah, but yeah, it's all about moving money from things they can't control to things they can control. I think
Oh, I
overall,
know,
but
but
yeah.
I'm glad that we're doing it. I mean, the idea of people going to jail for 5 or 10 years for marijuana is
Oh yeah,
absurd.
it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, so tell people where they can find your book at.
You could find Stoney Mountain Park on Amazon. It's just my author name, J.R. Bradbury. Just put Stoney Mountain Park. It's available on Amazon. And if you go on Substack, JR Substack. And that's where you can find it.
So is it Stoney with an E? I just typed it in there. I don't know if
Yes,
I
it
typed.
is.
Okay.
Stoney Mountain Park.
Yeah. Okay. You can find that on
Fiction.
Amazon, or you can go over to J Bradbury. It's .substack.com and find more musings from Mr. Bradbury, who has a building named after him in California somewhere, the Bradbury Building. But maybe it
Yeah.
wasn't for you, but for
I
somebody
don't
named
think so. And
Bradbury.
like, I'm not related to Ray Bradbury at all. I've gotten that question. Um, there is an author named John Bradbury, and that's why as an author I use J.R. Bradbury,
Uh-huh.
because in Amazon you can't.
Right. Yeah. It's like Screen Actors Guild or something. You can't have two names the same.
Exactly.
Well, thanks, John. I appreciate you taking
Thank
some
you,
time with
man.
me today. And best of luck to you on your future endeavors. And I'm glad that you're feeling better. It's fantastic to hear people who solve their problems and keep up with their solutions so that they do better in their life.
Yeah, thank you, man. This is great, and I love being on. Anytime you want to have me. Thanks so